Hello, everyone. We're here at Bumbershoot Festival 2024. There's a new district called the Animation District, which is super fantastic. We've got all kinds of animation, which I love. It's not just what you think. We've got VR, we've got AR behind us, we've got all kinds of mixed reality, and we love seeing that represented, especially as future arts. And we're so lucky to have Lauren here. I just experienced Lauren's artwork. It's a virtual reality piece in a headset, but it's kind of augmented too. Like I could see through it a little bit, which is fantastic. Lauren's a new media artist and many other things that I'm still learning because we just met, and that's the beauty of these events. And yeah, Lauren, please tell us about yourself and your background and what got you here.
Yeah, thank you. So I am a new media artist and a developer, and this is my first year at Bumbershoot. I am excited to be here, and so my background is in engineering, and I kind of develop some technical skills and work with code and like to mix that with art forms. I'm also a musician, so I'm really interested in mediums that are new and on the frontier of new technology that you can use to create interesting art experiences that are unique and you can't see any other way. So at Bumbershoot this year, I brought a mixed reality piece called Geogroove, and it's essentially an interactive sound experience where you can touch different objects, hear what they sound like, and then there's a mixed reality interface too, where you can see the world around you in a different way. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is taking this tech background, mixing it with art, music, and seeing what I can do with it.
I love that you bring your musicality in. I immediately was like, yeah, you're a musician. And, I have some background in music, and the way that each piece, or I guess each section of the artwork brings you into a new instrument. I mean, you built essentially instruments that you get to play with and interact with throughout the experience. I think it's like a 5-minute loop or
That's
whatnot.
right, yeah.
And I was curious when you were building the instruments in VR, and there's the interface of the user, playing it, and then there's the design visually of the instrument. What were your kind of inspirations for the visual of it and then the engagement of it?
Yeah, so a lot of this was kind of a ground-up experience. I tried a lot of different experiments with different physics systems and different shapes. For this specifically, I was inspired by abstract artists and artists that work primarily with shapes and kind of incoherent forms, and I wanted to bring that into VR to create something that, unlike many VR experiences that are trying to recreate our world, make something that is really just unreal and abstract. So I did a lot of experiments with different forms and physics, and just kind of tried to see what felt fun and interesting to play with, and basically created some instruments with what seemed the most exciting, and iterated on it, added more design elements, animations, tried to make it very responsive, so every kind of movement and touch kind of had a reaction that feels really cool to it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the playfulness and how, the engagement of it felt really satisfying. I was telling you, you asked me like, what was your favorite essentially instrument that you played, right? Which is wild to me because I'm like just waving my arms. You'll see me waving my arms, and I was just like testing it, how quickly can I move it? And it was very reactive, and it was so satisfying. It actually took me back to like this berry popping that I used to do when I was little. Like, and that's totally wild to me that you can be immersed in this virtual world and it can bring you back to a memory because you had vibrations
Yeah,
happen in the hand, in the, you know, what are they called?
The controllers,
The controllers,
yeah.
yes, which you use differently. Like I haven't experienced controllers used that way, that reactive way. So, yeah, I'm curious, being in virtual reality and kind of pushing those boundaries also from that engineering perspective. What are some ways that technology allows you to express the sensorial environment, you know, that other technologies haven't? I don't know if you've worked, like, I don't know enough about you your history as an artist, but like, have you used other tools, and how has this tool, you know, push that sensorial boundary for you?
Definitely. Yeah, I do a lot of work with physical installations also, where you have physical objects you're touching, and maybe there's things that you touch that make noise, and it's a very material experience, and which is really cool because it's easy to see, it's easy to interact with in a way compared to VR, but you're limited by a lot of material constraints, and things are very expensive. You have to buy a lot of equipment to set up something that's really big and really cool. One thing that's great about VR is once you have the equipment, it's free to make any scale experience you want. So you can make anything you can imagine, and it's free, and you can also use a lot of kind of physics that don't work in the real world. You can have things that float, you can have gravity going different directions.
Right.
So it really allows a new level of creative freedom that I think there's a lot for people to explore there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could see that. It's almost like you have this instrument that's a full portal, and once you can get in there and understand that tool, you can build anything. I love that you mentioned, come back to the idea of physics, and how physics is it's a thing we don't think about every day. We just are in them. Mm-hmm. And you don't have that in VR. You know, you can really mess with it, although there's also the whole, like, you have to be aware that a body still has to experience with it.
Right.
So there's, you know, been some issues in the past with VR, but I found that VR has really come a long way, and it's becoming more accessible. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to take into account when you're designing, because, like you're saying, it's really easy to create experiences where you're moving too fast and you feel nauseated, or maybe things are too difficult to reach or to touch. So it takes a lot to build a world that feels comfortable and natural while still bringing something different than normal reality. Yeah,
absolutely. We have a question from the audience, which is the following from Chiara Obscura. Were there any surprising reactions or engagement you saw from viewers so far? And I want to answer it really quickly first, which is the kids love your work.
Yes.
And I'm always all about artwork, technology artwork that brings multi-generations together in a way that is playful, but also asks questions. So that was for me, but I'm curious for you, what was the main?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that the kids' reactions have been hilarious. There's been so many kids that put the headset on and they just go wild, and they're just waving their hands, touching everything they can, screaming. They see the world around them with this kind of mixed reality filter, and they're yelling at their mom to wave her hand. And it's been really hilarious. There's kids who are just punching everything they can. So it's been really, really funny to watch that. But yeah, and then at the same time, other people who this is the first time they've tried VR, and it's cool to see them kind of amused and confused at the same time, and trying to kind of understand where they are. But overall, it's been awesome to see.
Yeah, that really just was so charming, and I loved that. And it also allows kids to engage with a technology in a way that's playful and that opens their mind to expression. That's the difference for me in what artists do for technology is they ask questions and they encourage that self-expression, and you do it not only through designing this interface that's abstract and creates a beautiful instrument that can't exist in reality, but you also encourage, like, I couldn't help but want to touch it, and like, if you roll the footage again, you'll see me waving my hands like a crazy person, and I had so much fun. And also as a dancer, like, I just was like imagining that it's a choreography, right? Like, that's something I wondered. I was like, as you were designing these instruments, did you have a thought about the choreography of the engagement and how the body would feel? There was one that's like, I had to kind of go down here, and one that's up there, and I just could feel my body move through the instrument itself.
That's an interesting question. I can't say choreography or that kind of movement was one of my main focuses. It came into play the most as far as I wanted to make something that could be seated and it could be more accessible, and all of the movements would be something that could hopefully within kind of a basic reach or an adjustable reach be accessed. But at the same time, I also wanted to make a lot of experiences where hand movement is going to change what you're experiencing. So with sounds, I wanted to make something where really big movements would make really big changes in sound. And I think that kind of leads to people, waving around like crazy and moving their bodies as much as possible.
I love that. Yeah. If we can roll the footage again just to see it now after you heard us describe it. Oh, gosh, there I am about to be a wavy, crazy person. But we have another question that came through. Thank you, Ann Prados. How did you imagine the control in such a different way? We're talking about it encouraged all this movement. What was that moment that crystallized the realization for you of how it would work and, how it would engage with folks?
So I originally wasn't actually going to have a controller for this experience. I was going to use hand tracking so that you wouldn't have to hold anything. You'd be using your hands to explore the space. But I found that having the vibrating feedback added a lot to this experience. And I think, like, with VR, the cool thing about it is that you're able to create all these sensations with sound and with vision, and you're tricking your body. And with the controller, I knew that I wanted to use the physical touch sensation and movement sensation as much as possible. And so, for that reason, I wanted to make sure that I was kind of focusing on, how that can feel responsive and how people can feel like that's really integrated in their experience.
That's awesome. We just had another question about, it's very playful to watch, probably. And is that a common theme in your work, I guess, opening up that playfulness that is who we are as humans. And that, to me, is one of my favorite part of artwork, right, is being able to play in a way that maybe we haven't since we were kids, and remember what it's like to be curious and to ask questions and to think differently and be in your body differently, get a little weird. Like, does that come up in when you create as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. I love creating things that are playful. I love experiencing things that are playful. That's the thing that's great about VR is I've had some of the most hilarious experiences in VR because the most absurd things can happen. And I like creating experiences that are delightful and, give people an experience that feels uplifting. So playful for sure. I always like to have an element in what I do.
I love that. Well, as we wrap out here, are there any kind of being here at Bumpershoot in this beautiful courtyard, and showing your artwork in this courtyard and exploring these themes. Just what's kind of the what's maybe last or opening or thought on your experience being here, inaugural, animation district, and bringing more of this kind of work into a public realm to experience. What just last kind of thought or reflection from you?
I love being at spaces like this where I feel like today I've been so inspired and also been able to inspire other people. And I think seeing mediums and these kind of, like you're saying, like things beyond just what you would imagine with animation, but things that are interactive and games. And it's been really cool to meet the other artists and walk around and see some really cool exhibits and introduce VR to people for the first time. So I appreciate Bumbershoot as a kind of melting pot for these types of mediums.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, why we met, and I hope to continue, following your work. I thought it was just really, really fun experience and got me thinking about the tool differently. And that's an open door right there. So thanks for being here. Thanks for talking.
Yeah,
and anyone out there, who hasn't been to Bumbershoot, we still have the rest of tonight. We have tomorrow. Come out. But at the very least, follow Lauren's work. I think we'll have her information in the chat somewhere, and yeah, keep it playful and keep exploring. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See y'all.